Welcome to the podcast where we explore how higher education can become a beacon of inclusion and resilience in times of crisis. Looking back at the past 2 years, I have to say I'm genuinely proud of how the higher education sector, including our own university, rose to the challenge. The speed, compassion, and creativity with which institutions responded to the needs of exiled students was extraordinary. What began as emergency support quickly turned into long-term systemic action.
Yeah, and that's exactly what today's episode is about. We'll be walking you through the findings of the Best Practices Report developed with the EXIL project. It's one of the key results of our work, and it captures how universities across Europe created effective, often innovative responses to the displacement crisis, and what others can learn from those experiences.
So let's start at the beginning. Maciej, the EXIL project was launched in 2024, but the roots go further back. What was the motivation?
Yes, the idea for EXIL emerged in the very first months of the full-scale war in Ukraine in 2022, and it was initiated by FMD, our long-standing partner with whom we've collaborated on several European projects. FMD recognized the urgent need to support EXIL students and saw Poland as a country directly bordering Ukraine and receiving one of the largest waves of displaced people as a natural starting point for such an initiative. At Poznań University, we were already deeply involved in responding to the crisis on the ground, offering shelter, guidance, psychological support, and integrating displaced students into our academic system. But very quickly, it became clear that this wasn't just a Polish issue. It was an European challenge. That's why the project was shaped as a transnational effort. The partnership was built strategically, combining institutions with direct experience supporting EXIL students, as well as those with the capacity to scale and share best practices. And so, EXIL was born to map, document, and disseminate the most effective approaches across higher education institutions in Europe.
And the word exiled is important here, isn't it? We deliberately chose it instead of refugee.
Absolutely. EXIL is broader and more inclusive. Not every student fleeing war or persecutions qualify legally as a refugee, but the experience of displacement, disruption, and trauma is very real. So we use EXIL students or students in exile to capture that full spectrum from asylum seekers to undocumented migrants, or even students with temporary protection status.
Before we dive into what we learned, let's talk about how we got there. This was not anecdotal or journalistic. It was a structured, multi-country effort. Walk us through the methodology.
Right. The best practices report was led by Poznań University as part of the second work package. We worked with 7 other universities and organizations from Belgium, France, Ukraine, Lithuania, Bulgaria, and Poland. Each partner documented 2-3 case studies, interventions, or programs that had clear impact on the integration of EXIL students. We developed a common template for describing each initiative, its goals, how it worked, challenges, lessons learned, and recommendations. We also conducted interviews with EXIL students and staff and ran a multi-country survey to understand the real need, expectations, and obstacles those people face.
And we should mention the report wasn't just an endpoint. It also feeds into other major results, the recommendation guides for pedagogy and support services, and the awareness campaigns we'll be rolling out.
Yes, indeed.
So let's turn to the findings. One of the strengths of the report is that despite national differences, certain patterns emerged. What were the most striking common themes?
The first is that holistic support works best. That means combining academic advising, psychological support, legal assistance, language learning, and social integration, ideally all under one coordinated framework. KU Louvain in Belgium, for instance, offers a fully integrated model that addresses academic, emotional, and legal needs. Poznań University, too, we are trying to link counseling with academic services and peer mentoring.
Another strong theme was language and cultural integration. It's not enough to speak the host country's language. Exiled students often face cultural gaps that make them feel alienated.
Exactly. Projects like Access to University in Belgium and KTU's language mentoring model in Lithuania show that when language learning is paired with social interaction and peer engagement, the impact is far greater. At KTU, exiled students were matched with local mentors, allowing them to practice everyday conversation, navigate campus life, and feel more connected, not just linguistically, but also emotionally. Similar access to university blended language courses with academic bridging and community building activities, which help students gain both confidence and a sense of belonging. Many participants reported that this integrated approach not only improved their language skills, but also led to better academic outcomes and faster adaptation. It's a powerful reminder that language education is most effective when it's rooted in real relationships and shared experiences, not just classroom instruction.
Right. Let's now talk about one of the more sensitive but essential issues: mental health and trauma. What did we learn?
Now, this is not optional. The psychological well-being of exiled students must be treated as a core component of academic support, not an afterthought. Many have experienced deep trauma, war, displacement, separation from family, and long-term instability. Without recognizing this, even the best academic programs may fail to support them fully. Some of the most impactful initiatives we documented address this head on. At UCU in Lviv, a dedicated support office provides psychological counseling and emotional support tailored to the specific needs of exiled and displaced students. This is complemented by a legal clinic, which helps students understand their rights and navigate legal complexities, an approach that connects legal clarity with emotional stability. Meanwhile, Kosminski University has taken important steps toward destigmatizing mental health challenges. Events like Depression Day open space for conversation and help normalize seeking support. While these services are not formally trauma specific, they create a welcoming environment where students can access help without shame. These examples reinforce the need for psychological care to be visible, accessible, and culturally sensitive, not as an emergency path, but as a part of a long term support system.
I was struck by how effective peer led initiatives were too. Students supporting each other. It creates a community where people feel less alone.
Yes, peer support groups have proven to be one of the most effective and appreciated formal assistance across many institutions. They're low cost, easy to implement, and highly adaptable to different contexts. More importantly, they create safe, informal spaces where exiled students can share experiences, build trust, and feel understood by others who have faced similar challenges. Unlike formal counseling or administrative services, this peer-led initiative fosters empathy, belonging, and mutual support, often in ways that traditional system can't. In several cases highlighted in the report, students describe peer groups as the first place where they truly felt seen and accepted in the new academic environment. That sense of connection can be a powerful catalyst for recovery, confidence, and also academic success.
Mhm. Were there any best practices that really stood out in terms of creativity or innovation?
Definitely. The virtual visiting scholar program at UCU is a brilliant way to keep exiled students connected with their academic disciplines, even from shelters or temporary housing. Another great one is UC Louvain Access to University. It combines academic bridging courses, legal support, and job coaching. That's a comprehensive model other institutions should look to.
And let's not forget Henaluk's Welcome program. They assign dedicated staff to help students with everything from housing to medical appointments. It's about making the invisible visible, those small logistical things that can derail a student's experience if neglected. So here's the big question: how do we make these practices sustainable beyond short term projects?
That's where institutional commitment truly comes in. one of the clearest messages from the report is that short-term reactive measures are not enough. While emergency responses were crucial in the early phase of the crisis, universities now face the challenge of transforming these temporary solutions into long-term embedded strategies. The report strongly recommends moving beyond ad hoc efforts towards building systemic frameworks that are prepared for future displacement, whether due to war, political instability, or climate-related crises. This means securing dedicated funding streams, employing specialized and trained staff, and including support for exile students in the university's core strategy and policy document, not just side initiatives. It also involves investing in institutional learning, collecting data, monitoring impact, and continuously adapting support models based on the real students' needs. Only through this kind of forward-looking strategic approach can higher education institutions offer sustainable inclusion, build resilience into their systems, and ensure that displaced students are not just accommodated, but truly integrated and empowered.
So it becomes part of the university's DNA, not just a reaction to crisis.
Exactly. And we're seeing that shift beginning to take shape across several institutions. Some partners like KTU have already started adapting their admission policies, student support framework, and language programs to reflect what they learned during the Ukrainian crisis. But they are not alone. Other universities are also taking steps to formalize the lessons of emergent response into lasting structural change. What was once developed as a temporary measure is now being built into institutional systems, from the design of orientation program and mental health services to the creation of flexible curricula, bridge courses, and recognition of foreign qualification. In many cases, these adaptations are helping not only exile students, but also international students and other vulnerable learners. It's a promising development, a sign that higher education is learning how to become not just reactive, but proactively inclusive, building resilience into its everyday operations. And the more these practices are normalized, the more prepared we'll be collectively to respond to future crises with agility, compassion, and of course, professionalism.
What about the challenges? Where are universities still struggling?
There are still several critical areas where universities continue to struggle. First, and perhaps most urgently, the recognition of qualification. Many exiled students arrive without diplomas, transcripts, or formal documentation, either because they fled in haste or because the institution back home are no longer operating. Even when documents are available, host country systems often fail to recognize them due to legal or bureaucratic incompatibilities. This creates long delays, uncertainty, and in some cases, force students to repeat years of study they've already completed. A more flexible humanitarian approach to academic recognition is specifically urgently needed. Second, housing remains a major challenge, particularly in large urban areas where student accommodation is already in short supply. Displaced students face the double burden of navigating unfamiliar rental markets while often lacking guarantors, financial stability, or legal status. Without dedicated housing solutions or institutional support, many risk overcrowding, exploitation, or even homelessness. Third, there is still a significant gap in multilingual administrative support. Many universities' offices are not equipped to handle students who don't speak the local language fluently. Yet, these students need help with critical procedures, from enrollment and visa extension to health insurance and accessing medical care. The absence of language-sensitive staff or translated materials can turn even simple tasks into major barriers. Addressing these gaps requires more than goodwill. It demands investment, planning, and cross-sector cooperation. Only then can universities ensure that access to education is truly equitable for exiled students.
And of course, funding. A lot of these programs were funded through emergency mechanisms. We need structural support from ministries and the EU to keep them going. So, to wrap up, what's your message to a university that hasn't yet faced a large wave of displaced students?
But be proactive. The next crisis, whether triggered by armed conflict, climate-related disaster, or political upheaval, is not a matter of if, but when. And when it happens, universities that have already invested in inclusive systems will be far better equipped to respond swiftly and then compassionately. So don't wait for a wave of displaced students to arrive before taking action. Now it's time to build resilient, inclusive structures, hire multilingual staff, develop trauma-informed support services, create flexible admissions pathways, and ensure that recognition of non-standard qualification is possible. So prepare your institutional culture as much as your procedures, because ultimately those systems won't just benefit EXIL students, they make higher education better for everyone, more adaptive, more human, and more just.
And connect with others. The EXIL network is growing. Use the report, borrow ideas, collaborate. You don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Exactly. This is about building a European higher education system that's not just excellent, but resilient and inclusive.
So, if you are interested in reading the full Best Practices Report or joining one of our upcoming workshops or events, head to the EXIL Project website.
Let's make sure our universities are places where EXIL students don't just survive, they thrive, contribute, and feel truly welcomed.
So, thank you everyone for listening to our podcast. Don't forget to share, subscribe, and stay tuned for our next episodes.
Until then, stay inclusive, stay prepared.